So just a little background on the idea behind this roundtable discussion. Writing pedagogy on the whole is somewhat new to the Indian context, though of course by now it's definitely spreading. You have a lot of universities now offering writing programs and having writing centers, and Krea University is happy to be in some ways at the forefront of this, largely thanks to Dr. Ananya who's here, who's really been the Johnny Appleseed of writing centers. Wherever she goes, writing centers seem to crop up. But while the role of the writing instructor has to some extent become somewhat cemented, the role of writing tutor is still somewhat new and is something that perhaps we haven't heard much discussion about. But we do exist. They do exist throughout. And this session is largely dedicated to looking at the role of the tutor as being imagined as distinct from that of the instructor by virtue of the more targeted and personal attention it makes possible. With the pandemic rendering education increasingly impersonal as a result of the unplanned shift to an online format, writing tutors have found ways to adapt their pedagogical practice to the needs of this new paradigm. So this roundtable features writing tutors from Krea University, Azim Premji University, Ashoka University, and OP Jindal Global University. And they're all going to share a bit about their experiences, the challenges they faced, and I'll introduce them shortly, but thank you all for being here. My name is Samir Abraham Thomas. I'm a faculty associate at the Center for Writing and Pedagogy at Krea University. I was also helped set up the student tutor program at Krea University for the first trimester of this academic year. And basically what we were doing is we had second year students tutoring their first year peers for the writing and oral communications course. So this is my first attempt sort of setting that up, and it is thanks to that also that I'm here and I'm lucky to be in conversation with the tutors that we have today. Just a brief note, this session will have a Q&A discussion at the end. So please feel free to everyone here, put in your questions, any questions or comments that you have in the chat box, and we will come around to those in the last half an hour or so. Okay, so let me just introduce our discussants here today. First of all, Ila Ananya. Ila Ananya teaches at the Language Center at Azim Premji University. She's previously worked as a reporter at the Lady's Finger and also writes fiction. Welcome, Ila. We also are joined by Naincy Catherine. She's a sociologist and translator. Her research interests include farmer suicides in India, environmental history of Delhi, and Hindi literature. And she's coming to us here as part of Ashoka University. Welcome, Naincy. Shachi Seth is an assistant lecturer at OP Jindal Global University. She holds an MPhil in sociology from the University of Delhi. Her research revolves around questions of material cultures, nationalism, political economy, and the anthropology of the state and public sphere. She's previously also worked as a policy and research consultant with both government and non-government organizations. And last but not least, we are joined by Shreya Hegde, who is a student of economics and mathematics here at Krea University. She was a student tutor for the writing and oral communications course in the first trimester of this academic year, 2020 to 2021. And in some cases, she has a bit of a special place as part of the discussion, as she's the only student tutor we have here. We're also really lucky to be joined here today by Professor Sumitra Ranganathan. She's a senior assistant professor of music here at Krea University as part of the literature and the arts, School of Literature and the Arts, and as well as humanities and social sciences. Sumitra was actually in some ways the forerunner, one of the forerunners of the tutor program that we set up here. Last year, when we had no second year students at all, we only had first year students, and we only had so many faculty members. Sumitra was one of our faculty who very graciously agreed to help out and really mentor and tutor some of our WOC students. And we're really grateful for the help she's offered, and we're really honored to have her here today. Thank you so much, Sumitra, for joining us. And I'd invite her to just give a short welcome note to this session.
Thank you, Samir. Thank you, Ananya. I am really very happy to be part of this session today. So I just really quickly want to share something both of my own experience as a tutor for the WOC program for the Writing Center, and more broadly a response to what is happening with uh, with everything that I heard yesterday, because there are so many resonances in my head. I'm just going to try and share like 5 minutes of some of those thoughts directly in relation to the matter of tutoring. So I signed up for tutoring, uh, not because I've had a conscious writing practice, but because I really felt the need for a conscious writing practice. See, I am a person who has always written from the middle, and it has caused me a lot of pain. And I remember that in grad school, I went to a mid career graduate program. I was so shocked. I had spent 16 years in the IT industry, and I was a tech writer. So I wrote design documents, user manuals, name it, business functional specs, whatever, a whole range, a litany of documentation I've been writing pretty much all my life. And in college and in school, I was thought to be a good writer. But the very first annotation I turned in, I got it back in shreds. And it was a real shock. And then it's even, getting to a point of being conscious that writing is a practice. It's taken a lot of time for me, and so I thought a way of sort of getting the benefit of an amazing center like CWP at Krea for me is actually to be a tutor. And so that's the feeling with it I started. And I worked with two students. There are several things that came up. See, there's a difference between me and say Shreya Hegde. She's taken the WOC course. There's also a difference between me and Samir, or me and Naina Manjreka, who's taught the WOC course, because they've been through boot camp with Ananya, and I have not. But still, I did try to take the very useful handouts that we were given, the sessions that Ananya led for all the faculty. And because I'm a researcher and a writer myself, I started to sort of come up with some sense for how to internalize both reading and writing as a practice that I can communicate. And that really was sort of the idea with which I went into tutoring. I was working with students whom I found had really good analytical capacity. They were also fluent in their own language. I think Marathi in one case. I can't exactly remember the second language, but they were, and their English, they had good grasp of English, but there was a hesitation in communicating thought. So often I found that getting them repeatedly to really connect and talk through text, to really find sort of the space or the gap between voice and text, text and voice. Many of the things that Doti, I fell in love with Doti. I have to say that, I really like the text, and it appealed to me as a practitioner. So in those ways, the real connect that I built with the students in my office was a part of the whole learning experience. And to really come to the topic of today, how do you translate something like that, where this is an intimate space when you actually sit and talk through a piece of text, and you go through the range of things. It's an analytical exercise, no getting away from it. But at the same time, there is an exchange of every mode of engagement that I think WOC really speaks about, which ranges from, talking about evidence, to talking about logos, to talking about emotion, to talking about one's own experience, to talking about the context in which things are done. And so then there is that, the unwritten affect also of working with somebody on a piece that slowly you're trying to build a piece of understanding on. So, but on the other hand, I have co-taught the methods course with Naina Manjreka, who is a WOC teacher for the last 2 years. And it's been amazing how effective it's been in our social studies research methods course. So we have actually, Ananya has made an effort to bring in many of the ways you read for a research question, for a hypothesis, for evidence, for where the argument, for finding the gaps. And at the same time trying to translate that into writing an annotation. What do you mean by an analytical piece of writing? What is a summary? What is an annotated bibliography that actually speaks to a particular research question? So online we managed to transition many of the things that have been communicated in the WOC course. It's now part of a working pedagogical practice. And I have to be very, I know it is because Nana was co-teaching with me. So that's the other way in which I've managed to assimilate this. And finally, I just want to say, I know you're going to start at 12. See, I was very taken with some of the things that were said yesterday, especially, Akhil Khatyal talked about the connection between theory and practice. And as a practitioner myself, I'm a musician. At the same time, I'm very interested in cognition. See, we were all right. So there is a disarticulated, implicit practice, an implicit knowledge of how to write clearly exists. And that implicit knowledge can sometimes translate to expertise. Sometimes it doesn't. But when you go into a mode such as a writing center, you really, through very many practices, trying to make that world more explicit. And when you do that, of course, I think this is a part in some sense of you need the peer tutors, you need the student tutors, because how else, if I'm as a musician really want this practice to keep growing, and this kind of a porous link between theory and practice, we need to reflect. And I think therefore the idea of practice and theory for me are really joined, and that's where I see this conference also functioning. And I've been very, very excited to listen to everything that's gone on. Thank you, Samir, Ananya, and everybody else for having me. I look forward to the panel today.